Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cobuzz Live. We've had a couple of weeks off because I actually got COVID and have been dealing with that for a couple of weeks. That was a total experience, but thank goodness I got over that, and it's much better now. And I got to tell you, smelling and tasting totally overrated. You really don't need those senses at all. But at any rate, much better. And I had so many kind notes and messages and whatnot about while I was going through this, and just wanted to let everyone know how much I appreciated it. So hey, welcome back to Cobuzz Live. It's good to be back. I've got a really special guest, a good friend of mine, Andrew Jones. I've known him for years, and he's just one of the most I would say most interesting engineers I've ever met. You meet a lot of engineers that can give just tons of information, but so many times they're just not really very people centric or whatnot. Andrew's one of those rare engineers that the personality on this guy is just unbelievable. Someone asked me if Andrew was going to talk in his fake British accent. And I said, well, look, if he does, I'll start talking in my fake British accent as well. Well, you'll hear the absolute worst fake British accent ever when I start talking in mine, but Andrew's is actually real. So hey, before we get going, we're going to tell you a little bit about Cobuzz and what we've got going on. So Cobuzz is a high res FLAC service. We stream in 24/1. We stream up to 24/192. Everything we've got is at least 16-bit. We don't even do an MP3 tier because you can get MP3 really anywhere. We're a very specialized company, and we want to deliver specialized music to you. We want it to sound as good as it can possibly sound. So the lowest resolution that you can get on Cobuzz is like a CD quality. It's like 1644, but you can go all the way up to 24/192. And we don't just have a couple of those. We've got millions of 24-bit. I think it's at this point up to probably 3 or 4 million. So at any rate, that's the basics on Qobuz. And it's not really very expensive. Last November we went down to a $14.99 per year, and if you pay annually, you're down to like $12.50. So you're dealing with $12.50 a month to get like millions and millions of high resolution tunes and full resolution tunes. In fact, I tell people all the time these days, if you're going through the trouble of burning your CDs onto a hard drive, look, if you want to do it for a hobby and just to find out what kind of a heartbreak it can be, go for it. But most likely, if you've got a 16-bit version, we'll have the 24-bit version. And our 24-bit version not only sound better, but it'll have the metadata involved with so much of the music that really enhances the experience. And you'll never be able to get that kind of metadata on your system. So my biggest recommendation is, if you are going to start a hard drive or maintain a hard drive, do it with something that you can't get on a streaming service or a high resolution streaming service. Do it with your obscure stuff. That way you maintain a much smaller hard drive. It's a lot easier to deal with, and you probably won't crash it quite as much as if you do that. So at any rate, we're dealing with $15 a month. You can get, we've gone from 40 to 60 million tunes now. So it's a lot of music. And it's so nice that very rarely people are calling me up going, oh gosh, why don't you have this popular artist or this popular artist? We've got them almost all now. We've been going for 2 years, and it's just getting better and better every single day. In fact, we've got thousands and thousands of songs that come out every single week. And a little bit later, we'll have Sujan Hong on, and she'll talk about our new releases that are going to be coming out tomorrow. That's always such an exciting time for me, because you start seeing all of these releases that, some I've got on CD or not, but most likely they'll be coming out in high resolution. Depending on the week, about 70 to 80% of all of the stuff that we're getting on Cobuzz is in at least 24-bit format, which is really cool. So our next plan up is the family plan. You can get your whole family on Cobuzz for for $25 a month, which is 6 people. That makes it an unbelievable deal. So if your kids are into Spotify right now, turn them on to Cobuzz. It's just a better experience. And once they start listening to high res and start really kind of understanding and feeling high res, you'll find your kids will not want to go back. But I can tell you, it will take a while. It'll take a while before they really start hearing and recognizing the differences and the small differences. If you don't know the differences between sort of standard and high resolution, they're tiny, tiny differences. They're the smallest details that you could possibly hear. And if it were only one or two of those details, you would never hear it. But there's literally millions and millions of details that have got to do with the room size and the placement and so once you start adding these millions of details together, you really do hear a huge difference. There's always been a big argument. Can people hear the difference between high and low res? Here's the real deal. When recording engineers record in high res, you end up with a better recording, period. In fact, if you listen at recordings that have been done over the last 5 years or so, they're amazing. They're like nothing we have ever heard before. And so recordings are just getting better and better and better, especially if the recording artist and the engineer has got the tools, have the tools to record high res from the source, from the instrument on. At that point, I don't know any engineer that actually mixes that would disagree that high res is far superior to standard resolution stuff. So that's our family plan. And then we've got our Sublime Plan. The Sublime Plan is really, really cool because you get to buy your albums really, really inexpensively. So if you are the type that likes to own and download your own music, then do it from Cobuzz. Because first off, even if you're not a Sublime member, we're typically 10-20% cheaper than any place on the internet. But if you are a Sublime member, you get these crazy deals that, like the Super Tramp album. I think 24,192 for what is like $7 or $8, something like that. So the prices are just unbelievable, especially on Sublime. So if you are a downloader and you subscribe to Sublime, you'll pay for your whole in savings. You'll pay for your whole subscription in 2-3 albums that you download. It's a really spectacular deal, and plus it's a great way to support your artist. So even if you're not the downloady kind of person or the kind of person that really wants to own your music, this is like buying a t-shirt from these guys. It's like buying an album. The artists actually get a good bit more cut and a normal cut. So they end up making more. We all know that this needs to happen. So we do have a method for you to support your artists. The next thing we've got up that I'll tell you about before I bring Andrew on is our playlists are absolutely spectacular. They are so much fun. I think Neetha can put up the latest one we've got, and I've been dying to get this playlist. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but Andrew, anytime you visit Andrew at any show that he's at, you're not going to find the guy playing Tin Pan Alley or Hotel California. It's always going to be something super, super interesting. So Andrew has put together a playlist. It's called, I think, Andrew Jones playlist or demos, Andrew Jones demos. I think if you just search Andrew Jones, you'll even get that. And let's see, I think that is about it before I bring on my buddy Andrew Jones. You guys be sure to ask Andrew any questions that you have, and put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. If you've been a fan of the show, or if you've seen the show a few times, you'll know that many times we don't even get to the questions because there's just no way to fit them in unless it just sort of happens. But we always answer the questions. So we will have, if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you're on, we always go back, and Andrew will go back to and help answer these questions that you may have. So without further ado, I would like to bring on the world famous Andrew Jones.
Hi, David.
Hey, Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to see you're recovering, although I had suspicions that you'd got COVID a long time ago because your jokes are just so tasteless.
Man, I have got to get a rim shot going on. I swear, I've actually got one on my iPad, and it's just got like all kinds of sounds. And I've been thinking, I got to bring that on. It's got the low whistle, the it's got all kinds of like little sound effects. So next time I have you on, I will not be on without sound effects. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. It's good to be seeing you and talking to you.
Always. It's always a thrill. I always get to learn something from you. But when you teach people things, it's always in a way that normal people can understand. So I really appreciate, just the way that you explain things to people, and just the rapport that you build with people so much, because you answer questions in a really genuine way, and not often does it involve math. So certainly appreciate that.
That's because I'm not good enough. I started life as a physicist, and I've always said that physicists are failed mathematicians, and engineers are failed physicists, and I've worked my way down to engineer. So.
I love that whole spiel you've got there. I can remember it was maybe a decade ago or so. We were talking, and I was talking about some speakers. They were not your speakers. That's another thing I really dig about you. We can talk about, any speakers, and you just tell me the right thing or the wrong thing, or you just tell me the real scoop, bottom line. And I was telling you about this pair of speakers that I just heard. They were like over $100,000 or something, and I'm going, wow, Andrew, these speakers, they just really, they did me, and they really sounded great. He goes, they really do, and it not a bad job for tinkers. And I'm, what do you mean tinkers? And he goes, well, David, I'm a scientist. I don't tinker. I know what's going to happen before it ever happens, or I've got a pretty darn good idea of what's going to happen. And that's sort of the difference between me and a lot of other speaker designers, which is absolutely 100% true. Do you remember that conversation?
It sounds rather a rude conversation on my behalf.
It wasn't a braggy thing. It was just like, but this is just the way it is. This is how I do things. And, so I really appreciated that. So let's see, Andrew, you're in California right now.
Yes, sunny Southern California. A nice toasty 75 degrees outside.
I think we had a leading up to this. Of course, we had to cancel your live stream a couple of weeks ago, because that's right when I was coming down with the funk and the COVID funk, and I was going, buddy, I'm sorry, I just don't think I'm going to be able to make this. Oh, no problem, Dave. We can do it anytime. So there's been a lot of pent up demand with this particular live stream. And one of my favorite comments was, is Andrew Jones going to be using his fake British accent again? It's so I said, well, look, if he does, I will, but I won't.
I've had a lifetime perfecting it.
Well, you've done a very good job. As we say often here, if I could talk like that, I would never shut up. But so at any rate, let's kind of get into it. You have been in this industry, gosh, I guess most of your life, huh?
Pretty much. I always like to joke. Yeah, I've said this often, but I was born. I am an identical twin, and mirror twin, which my brother's left.
I know. I've seen your. I know that's so freaky. I've seen your brother, and I'm going, oh my God.
kind of, we were born into it. No, I say we were born as a stereo pair. And we actually got interested in always in science and, talking of tinkering when we were kids, taking things apart, radios and everything. More interested in the electronic side to begin with. And then when my dad needed to buy a new stereo, he'd got one of those big console things that go across the corner of the room.
I had one of those.
Yeah, and we said, no, you're supposed to have separate. And we weren't reading hi-fi magazines, I don't think, at that point, but we were reading Practical Wireless, Practical Electronics, those kind of journals, Wireless World. And so he got a separate system. And then one birthday, we got this little all-in-one dance set, that's got the speakers in the cabinet and the auto changer and stuff, and a whole stack of records given to us by our aunt. And it's all 50s music and early 60s. And we just got into the hi-fi side of it. And for some reason, whereas my brother continued being mainly interested in the electronic side, I got interested in the speaker side. But, we were always building things, and our parents indulged us. We'd have the corner of the living room, and we'd have all our projects all over the floor, and we'd leave them there for days as we were building them. Little radio transmitters and walkie-talkies. I built, the ping pong game on the TV. I built one from discrete components. I was building oscillators to working at UHF to plug into the aerial socket of the TV, antenna socket. And I built a ping pong game on the spread all over in front of the TV. Just always doing things like that. Never really finishing anything, which, I don't know how I made my way into product development. Research is one thing, but product development, you're supposed to finish things, or at least have someone to finish them for you, which Pioneer, working within Pioneer, which we'll get into, that was very fortunate. Got lots of people who enjoyed finishing things. But so I was building speakers and just experimenting. It was fun. And so that, like early teens to now, that's really all I've ever done. Or
I think a lot of us were doing that kind of thing back then. I know I wasn't very good at it, but we were all doing it. I mean, we would string any speaker I could find. I would string them together. And my dad at one point taught me about impedance, and I'm going, yeah, Dad, I don't get it, but I had a little train set, and so he was explaining to me, he was an engineer with Western Electric, and he said, oh, well, this is the train set. You see the two long tracks beside each other. And I'm going, yeah. He goes, well, that would be parallel connections between the two devices. And he goes, but you see the trusses. And I'm going, yeah. He goes, well, any of those would be in series, because I remember wiring everything up on a train set, and it got super, super bright, but the bulbs started blowing out. And he's going, no, you've got to have some resistance. You've got to do this right. And it was, I remember distinctly, it was the first electrical property that I learned from a practical standpoint. It was basically, from a train set, but because you try to start stringing a pair, 14 pair of whatever speakers onto a console in parallel, and you let the smoke out. And it just doesn't work nearly as well.
One of the most dangerous experiments I'd done, I'd started reading about electrostatic speakers and ionic speakers, where you excite the air directly. And so I came home one day and thought, I'm going to try and experiment with this. So I got two perforated metal plates, and I carefully spaced them apart, about that far apart. And because we've got 240 volts on our mains rather than the paltry 120 volts we have over here, I thought that should be enough to generate a field between them. And those zero stat pistols for cleaning records and stuff? Yeah. I thought, well, that'll provide my ions. So I put these plates, I plugged them between live and neutral straight into the socket in the wall, that far apart, no insulation. And then I got the zero stat, and I'm squeezing the ions in between the plates, hoping I can hear some sound. Now it's going to be distorted, but I just wanted to get the magnitude of what was happening. And it
Right.
was so quiet. And I was getting my ear closer and closer and closer to these 240-volt plates, listening without actually touching my ear onto this direct connection to the wall. It was stupidly dangerous, but that's what you do when you're young.
I'm picturing this in my mind, and I'm going, I think we might be lucky to even have Andrew here, period. We should really be just dealing with one twin that I would have probably never known, and it would have been a tragedy. I didn't mention this to begin with, but there's a couple of really cool things that we're doing with ELAC, and you should know about these. The first thing, and this was really kind of important, is we're going to be giving away a pair of the UB52s. These are $600 loudspeakers, and we're going to do this a little bit differently. We usually say, oh, just, whoever asks questions or makes comments, we'll throw you in. We're not going to do that this time. What we're going to do this time is ask you a bit of a trivia question. You'll be answering these, and whoever has the best answer is going to win them. So here's your trivia question. I want to hear two very good advantages of a concentric driver. You may not know what that is right now. You may even have to look it up on the internet, but this is one of the things that Andrew is probably the most well known for. So your question again, what are the advantages, or give me two advantages of a concentric driver? Once you answer those, we'll be taking a look at them and deciding between the two companies, between ELAC and Cobuzz, who's going to win these awesome speakers. We're also going to be giving you, when you get these speakers, we're going to be giving you 90 days. 6 months of Cobuzz for free. Plus, we'll be giving another two 6-month subscriptions. They're all going to be based on this, so there can be more than one winner. So, good luck to you all. I hope you all, or I hope the most deserving of you. May the best person win. I guess that's the way we'll say it. So. Well, Andrew, you really have had I'm not sure if I should call it a sordid past. It's been an extremely interesting past that you've got, from the early days of you almost electrocuting yourself with 240 volts. I can't even imagine seeing that. I'm just picturing what your dad would have done if he would have walked in the room. I would have yelled. I would have made my son. He would have gone ahead and touched him, and it would have just taken him out. But I can't imagine 240 volts that close to your ear. Thank God you're okay, and you got so much smarter throughout your career. I guess let's just go ahead and talk about, to begin with. I don't really want to spend a ton of time on the history, because I think most people that are Andrew Jones fans sort of know where you came from. But just in case you haven't, and you haven't met this fascinating man, he has done a lot of really cool stuff. And the thing I really dig about your career, Andrew, is that the way it was built, the next step that you took in just about every position, really the step you were on before helped define that position and helped educate you for that position. So it wasn't like you went from 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. You actually took your time and learned a lot of things that a lot of engineers didn't have the opportunity to learn.
Well, it reminds me of that expression, you stand on the shoulder of giants to get to where you are. And I've been very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to learn from some of the best people in the industry through the years. And that's so valuable, the mentorship that I've got, all the way from university to postgrad research to...
tell me just a bit about the university, though. Tell me your degrees and how long you went to university and where.
Yeah, so my degree is in physics with acoustics, done at Surrey University. And I chose that specifically because I knew they'd got an acoustics course. course, they'd also got quantum mechanics and solid state physics, most of which I failed. I think most people tend to fail at quantum mechanics. But I got a good quality degree from that. Narrowly missed a chance. I was actually, between third and fourth year, the university liked to send you out into industry. So take a break, get a position in industry to learn more, then come back for your final year. And I had a placement at Philips Research Labs in Eindhoven, but they would only offer 6-month placements, and the university wouldn't accept that. They wanted a 1-year placement. And I'm going, but it's Philips Research Labs in Eindhoven. You know, that's so valuable compared to, you know, whether it's a 6-month or a 1-year placement, but they wouldn't let me do it. And I applied to KEF, but I was too late because they'd already got somebody. So I had to go straight through. But I came from that degree, went and joined my brother at his university, Essex University, under Professor Malcolm Hawksford, to do postgraduate research. So I was researching in a new method of doing computer-aided crossover network design. You know, a new mathematical.
That was new back then.
It was so new. Yes, I say a new method. That's why I paused, because it's kind of, there weren't many methods in those days. And so I did a few years of research in that. But then there was a research position, a research officer position, opening up in an adjacent department, the electronics. It was all in the electronics department, but this was a noise cancelling research group. And they were looking to do, they needed someone to take over and help them with the speaker design that they needed to do the anti-noise. So I joined that group. It was an easy shoe-in, because the guy that was doing that research was always coming into my lab saying, Andrew, I'm trying to design a speaker and I have some questions how to do it. So when I knew the prof was hiring, I went to him and said, you know, your guy was always coming to me to ask me how to design the speakers. So basically, I'm the one you should be employing, because he was asking me anyway. And I got the job. Rather brave of me to kind of say it.
So this
like
is
that.
when you went, this was the job that you got with KEF, right?
No, this was before KEF. So this was
this was at the, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so this was doing active noise cancellation. So building speakers. So we developed a relationship with ATC, and I would drive off up to London and meet with Billy Woodman, buy all these drive units, you know, 15-inch bass drivers, and fit them into cabinets, and we put them on board ships around the stack, you know, the funnel, to cancel the noise coming from the engines, that kind of projects. But it wasn't hi-fi, and I really wanted to get into hi-fi. But what was interesting, my first week in that project, Laurie Fincham had, I was a member, still am, of the Audio Engineering Society, and every month in London, they would hold a lecture. And it coincided my first week in the job of doing this noise control, and I was looking at the speakers they were doing, and they weren't getting good cancellation results. They put a box over the front of the speaker, which the exhaust pipe came into, so the sound would mix in that chamber and exit out another pipe. And it just was working horribly. So I go that week to a lecture by Laurie Fincham of KEF, technical director of KEF. And it was the first time he talked about the coupled cavity bass loading technique. And although the concept of it was not new, it originated in the 50s, this was the first time anyone had applied the full Teal Small type modeling to it to get a design process, a synthesis, rather than just an analysis. So I'm looking at this paper, and I'm looking at, wait, it's a closed box speaker with a second chamber over the front with a vent. I'm thinking, that's exactly what we've got in the acoustics lab where I'm doing the noise cancelling. They put a box over the front of the drive unit with a vent coming in and a vent going out. I bet I can apply those maths. So I took a copy of Laurie's paper that he'd presented at that lecture. Next morning, went into my lab. I think I have the solution. So I redesigned it based on those maths, got our lab technician to build the speaker, and it worked so well. It was just amazing. So that was my first exposure to the coupled cavity bass loading technique. And after a couple of 2 or 3 years in that job, I managed to join KEF. I was talking to Laurie at a show one day, and he was asking how I was doing and how's the research going. And I must have said something, because a couple of days later, I got a phone call from him. Hey, Andrew, it's Laurie here from KEF. Oh, hi, Laurie. This was, oh my God, it's Laurie calling me up. What on earth could he be calling me about? And he said, in our chat the other day, I realized that you never had a chance to come down and visit the factory and have a tour.
Oh my God. How old were you at this point?
25.
So you're like starstruck.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even in those days, I already knew that KEF for me was the kind of god of loudspeaker companies from a point of view of the research they were doing. So I said, yeah, fantastic. I'd love to do that. So we set up a date, and I put down the phone. I thought, I wonder why now, of all times, he's called me to see if I want a tour. Well, is this kind of a job interview? Did I? And I thought back to the conversation. I did say I was looking to get out of this research and more into hi-fi. I'm going to treat it as a job interview, so I'll put a suit on. And I went off there. It was a job interview. And so I got my tour, I got the interview, and that evening it was a AES lecture evening, so he drove me up to London and we had a nice long chat. Actually forgot to pick up one of the other engineers who'd left his car in a lay-by because Laurie was talking too much. That's where I learned how to talk too much. And so we do that, and then a couple of days later, Laurie calls me again. He says, oh, Andrew, after our interview, I realized we never filled out any of the proper paperwork. So I just have some details I need to put on here. He said, how do you spell your last name? I'm going, how do I spell my last name? I go, Jones. Only the most popular name in England. I heard this laughter, and I heard laughter from lots of people around him. What had been happening? Typical of Laurie, he wasn't going to admit that he couldn't remember my name. So he thought he'd be clever and asked me how to spell it. It's because he'd obviously asked everybody else there, and they all knew me but not my last name. And so his plan backfired because it was Jones. But I got the job.
It's the long-term loss of short-term memory. I can kind of relate with that one.
Getting that job, that was obviously the start, because that was, no matter what you learn at university, guys and gals, you don't learn how to design speakers at university. You learn how to learn, you learn some of the background information, but you can't walk out of a university saying, I can create a new speaker drive unit or something like that. You learn through mentorship at real companies, and that was mine. But I've now been offered a job. I'm told it will be research, not product development, because they don't have time for me to make mistakes in product. You can always make mistakes in research. My motto has always been, if I knew what I was doing, it wouldn't be research.
Right.
So, but this idea that I've now joined KEF, am I up to it? This is a dream job. My first real job in the hi-fi industry is with KEF in research, and I've got to live up to what I know of as the capabilities of KEF. So I was really nervous to begin with, but I soon settled in. They got a fantastic group of engineers, and that's where I got so much guidance from Laurie, and because of the connections through the AES, access to the best people ever. Lipschitz and Van der Kooi, professors of maths and physics at in Canada, and Peter Walker from Quad, and Dick Small and Neville Teal. And
you were like rubbing elbows with all the guys.
And then Dick actually joined us. He came for a year sabbatical from the University of Sydney, and he worked with us at KEF. And you were
doing mostly research with KEF, though, right?
I was still research at that time. And then he came in as a permanent job. And I remember the first time he came, we'd cleared out a space for him in the front office. And I've been looking through these books on cartoons, and the name of the cartoonist, the most fantastic cartoonist, is he got this picture, and it was kangaroos, and the kangaroos had round little glasses on, kind of buck teeth, and in the kangaroo's pockets, they'd got a pocket protector with pens, and it said "Kangaroo Nerds," right? Now, the important thing about this was Dick Small was American, an HP engineer, with glasses, transferred to Australia. He wore a pocket protector with pens in. He was the spitting image of a nerd. And American living in Australia, this cartoon was perfect. So I photocopied it. So the first morning, it was on his desk when he came in. Now, kind of, I didn't really know him at that time, but he's this, one of the most famous people in audio. And
I just well enough to shame him.
And sometime in the morning, he comes into our lab, brandishing this piece of paper, and he said, "Who left this on my desk?" And I'm, "Oh my God, what have I done?" I go, "Me." And he burst out laughing. He said, "This is the funniest thing I've ever seen." So that broke the ice.
Hilarious. Hey, listen, we're gonna take just a little bit of a break, and in just a minute, as soon as I can see Sue-Jan come on screen, we've really missed her. She's going to be talking a little bit about about a few new albums that we're getting in tomorrow. So why don't we take a break for just a few minutes, and we're going to bring in Sue-Jan, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, hello, Sue-Jan Hong. How are you?
Hey, David.
I've missed you.
How's
I think
it going?
everybody has missed you.
Well, yeah, glad to hear you are feeling better and doing better.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And thank you so much for being here. Sue-Jan so many times can't join us because she is between, I think, her and Neetha, they work, 25 hours a day. It just blows me away how much stuff she has to do. So anytime we can get her, I'm really, really I hope you look at it as a privilege. I certainly do. Her knowledge of music is deeper than I think anybody that works at Cobuzz, and we're so just thrilled and happy to have someone with this kind of a background and knowledge base as Sue-Jan. But I asked her to come on and talk a little bit about some of the new releases. One of these days, we're just going to do a show with you and just talk about music when you can carve out another, maybe the 26th hour. We'll do that.
Well, thank you. I mean, you and everyone else here, all of our colleagues are, equally committed to, this job.
Committed. That's
yeah. It's not necessarily fair to disregard our coworkers, but thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, well, I'll disregard them. When you're on the show, I just totally disregard everyone other than Neetha, which you can't disregard Neetha because she's just too important, right? But I'm going to just shut up for a minute, if you can believe it. I'm going to bring just Sue-Jan on. I'm going to leave for a while and let her tell us about a little bit of the music that's coming up, and then we'll bring Andrew back on and we'll tell you about a couple more surprises. See ya.
Cool. All right. Hey, guys. I am Sue-Jan Hong. I am head of music content for Qobuz US, and I am here with some picks for this week. We're going to start off with our album of the week, which is Cooler Returns by Kiwi Jr. This is the second album from the Toronto band. Their first album, Football Money, was actually my favorite album of last year. It originally was released in 2019 in Canada, but didn't get a stateside release until 2020. This is a perfect album if you like, oblique and witty lyrics and off-kilter, but really catchy melodies in the vein of Pavement, Stephen Malkmus or Courtney Barnett. Kiwi Jr. were actually scheduled to play in New York last March, like literally the weekend that everything shut down. So they are a band that I'm really looking forward to seeing live, hopefully in 2021, fingers crossed. This is out in 24/48 on Sub Pop Records. Next up, we have Caroline Shaw, Narrow Sea. This is written for and performed by So Percussion. vocalist Dawn Upshaw, and pianist Gil Kalish. So Caroline Shaw is a 38-year-old musician and composer who 7 years ago became the youngest recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for Music with her competition Partita for 8 Voices, joining past winners like Ornette Coleman, John Luther Adams, and Kendrick Lamar. Since then, she has produced for artists like Nas and Kanye West. She's worked with bands like The National and, also won a Grammy. So with Narrow Sea, Caroline Shaw and the performers have really created these, beautiful and interesting sense journeys that are guided by, the force of water, hence the album title. Take a listen to this tomorrow. It's going to be in 2496 from None Such Records. So we love getting new to high-res catalog editions on Qobuz. There are a bunch of titles coming tomorrow that will be available in high-res for the first time, and I wanted to call out 3 of them. The first is Even in the Quietest Moments by Supertramp, the 5th album. This is the one that features the single Give a Little Bit. Next up, we have Janet Jackson's blockbuster 3rd album, Control. I mean, this is hit single after hit single. This was produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And then we also have Ike and Tina Turner's River Deep Mountain High, which was produced by Ike and also the recently departed Phil Spector. Obviously, some complicated legacies there. But these 3 will be available in 2496, along with a couple dozen other editions. So look for those. And then wrapping up the week, we also have a new box set from Perry Farrell called The Glitz, The Glamour. Perry is probably best known for leading Jane's Addiction and also Porno for Pyros, and also for creating the Lollapalooza Music Festival. But this box set goes, deep into the early stuff and rarities. There's his pre-Jane's band, Psycom, post-punk band. So that's going to be part of the box set as well. And to go along with the release at this time next week, our Cobuzz live broadcast will be Perry in conversation with journalist Michael Azerrad. Michael is the author of the 1993 Nirvana bio, Come As You Are, and also one of my favorite music books, 2001's Our Band Could Be Your Life, which profiles 13 indie rock bands from the 80s, including Fugazi, Mission of Burma, The Replacements. Perry's got some pretty good stories to tell, so tune in for what is sure to be an entertaining conversation next week. And there you have it, my picks for January 22nd.
Sujan, thank you. It's always a pleasure. We always learn something from you. I cannot wait for that interview. That's going to be a lot of fun. Is that going to be, do you know what time that's going to be?
That is going to be same time as our typical Cobuzz live broadcast, so 4 p.m.
4 p.m. Fantastic. That's great. So we'll be looking forward to that. Sujan, thank you again for taking your time. I know you're always really busy, and it's always a pleasure to have you. So we'll I think we got a meeting in just a little while, so I'll probably be talking to you then.
All right. Take care, David.
Take care, Sujan. Thank you. So yeah, let's bring back on Andrew. It's always fun to have Sujan on. And man, Andrew, the problem with Andrew and I is we're friends, so we just ramble. But we gotta pull this together because we've been going for 40 minutes and we haven't really talked much about ELAC. So
yeah, I don't think we've even mentioned ELAC, have I?
Yeah, I want to kind of bring that in because you have done some absolute fascinating things with ELAC. But before we do that, I'm just going to bring up a couple of little things that you've worked on, and I don't want to really belabor them a lot. Although we could take these products and I'll do a whole show just on them because they were really quite innovative. But just to give the audience a bit of detail on what you've done, after you left KEF. Because that's when you really started designing speakers. I love the stories about how much you learned about measurements and just the things that make speakers works at KEF, which I think helped you. We were talking about stair stepping. I think this helped you a lot going through your next few positions. After KEF, and I think the first one after that was Pioneer?
Infinity.
Infinity, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sitting here looking at the speakers because we used to actually sell these, and I can remember years ago at Hi-Fi Buys, we were huge Infinity dealers, and then you joined the team. I didn't know who you were at that point. I had no clue. All I know is we got this really cool pair of speakers in that were unlike anything that we had ever had. And this was them. They were the Preludes. You worked on this project, right?
Yes, that was the first project for Infinity. I was working with Laurie on it because Laurie had left Kef at the invite of Floyd Toole to come over to the States and head up Infinity. And then Floyd also invited me to move over and work at Infinity. So working with Laurie again. I gave it about a year to see how things were going to work out, because it's not just changing jobs, it's changing countries. And so I finally resigned Kef on the morning of the Northridge earthquake to move to Northridge, California. I mean, talk about
great timing. Great
timing, yes. 2 hours before it was morning our time at 10 o'clock in the morning. I resigned. I'm going, and then 12:30 lunchtime, 4:30 in the morning California time, earthquake, boom. But I worked with Laurie on this, and we determined we want to do a high efficiency speaker, flat impedance, make it easy to drive, and you can't get high efficiency in a small enclosure from a passive speaker. So the idea was 12-inch side firing woofer with self-amplified but fed at speaker level input. So it was transparent to the user. You just connected your speaker terminals, your speaker wires to the terminals at the back of the speaker, plugged in power, and so the base unit, the side firing woofer, was self-powered and had the same effective sensitivity as a passive speaker that would meet the sensitivity requirements of the speaker. And it sounded really good and got some great reviews. And
yeah, I thought so. I think these were, at the time, these were about $8,000, if I remember right. So in their day, they weren't inexpensive speakers. There weren't even a lot of speakers that were that kind of price. But I remember when we got these things in, we did appreciate the active portion of the speaker. But one thing that we noticed right away was these things imaged like a bear. I mean, the speakers totally disappeared, and that's one thing about speakers I don't like. It's like if you got a speaker and you hear the boxes, it's not a good speaker. The boxes should just kind of get out of the way, and if they don't, it really ruins the experience, right? Music isn't two boxes. Music is a sound stage, and it's got depth and width, and this was a speaker that
you don't want to hear the box unless it's the original instrument.
Exactly. That's the box you want to hear. And I think another one you ended up doing, this was
that was almost a mini-me version of that. This was the Overture range. Overture 1, which is this one, and then there's Overture 2 and 3 as floor standing speakers. And this was taking the same idea. This was 1/3 of a cubic foot of internal volume there. It was about 12 by 12 by 5 inches wide, side-firing 8-inch self-powered 150 watt subwoofer section, crossing over to 2 mid-ranges and a tweeter. And that was a either 92 or 94 dB sensitivity speaker as far as you were concerned as a user plugging your amplifier in.
That's right. I remember. I'd forgotten about that, because you could drive these things with like a little receiver. It didn't really take like this. And prior to that, with Infinity, I actually had a pair of the IRS with 4 huge amplifiers and the 4 huge panels. I mean, they were so difficult to drive. These were, when we got them in, we were going, oh my God, what is this going to take to drive them? And they were really quite easy to drive, and they sounded great. But this was a time it wasn't, you never popped up on my radar then. You were just, I guess.
No, I was more back in the lab. I wasn't out in front. Yeah, we got Laurie Fincham. He was the technical director, and so most of the time to the outside world. And that was fine. That's his role. I was, at that time, I wasn't the kind of performer out in front of people that he was or I am now. That gradually came out of me, but I was happy doing the design work. I just love, like when I was doing research. Nobody cares what you're doing in research. You do, and you're very proud of what you've achieved. But try telling anyone what you've done, and it's next. Crossing over to product development was my chance to get exposure, and I gradually built up the exposure and the confidence to talk to everybody about that.
Well, the next iteration after that is when you caught my attention. Not that you wanted to, who cares, but it was the time that I started looking at these speakers going, I've never heard anything like this. Who in the heck made these things? And then your name started coming up, and it started coming up more and more frequently. And I was a huge fan of yours before we ever met. In fact, yeah, I probably embarrassed myself when we first met. Like I was talking and I was thinking about you, like you were thinking about, Floyd Toole or Lori Fincham or, some of the really super famous guys that you had dealt with. I was going, oh my God, I'm going to get to meet Andrew Jones. He's going to be at this show. At that time, I owned Peachtree Audio, and I had sought you out because I knew I wanted to hear these speakers. They were these little guys right here, which absolutely killed me. These were speakers that Andrew made with a subset of Pioneer TAD, and even to this day, they're some of the best speakers I've ever heard in my life. And they had the Concentric driver. I can't remember how much they weighed. You guys loaned me a set one year, and I do remember almost pulling out my O-ring trying to move them, from one wall to the next. What were they, like 300 pounds a piece or something?
330 pounds a piece. I actually did pull my arms out my sockets basically one year. It was over in Germany at the Munich high-end show, and we'd got a new room, and it was like 40 foot by 40 foot and just a bare open space. So the first day and a half was, where do we put them in here?
Exactly.
So long speaker cables on, so I didn't have to move the amplifiers, which were 300 pounds each. And just whole day, just waltz, you hug them and you waltz them around.
I remember.
And then trying to change the toe in, you're just kind of doing this to them. I woke up the next morning, I torn ligaments in my shoulder and exposed a bone spur, and I was in agony. And so that's the perils of working with big, heavy speakers.
So after that, after you left TAD, you made really quite a name for yourself. I mean, it was unbelievable. In fact, I don't even have a picture of them, but I wasn't even that impressed with them, but everybody else seemed to be. This little bitty tiny set of Pioneer speakers you built for, I don't know, it was $100.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole audiophile world was going nuts over these things. And I'm going, okay, well, Andrew built them. So I went out and bought a set, and I brought them home. I brought my $100 speakers home, and I've set them up, and I'm going, okay, well, they sound like a $200. I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed, but they sound like millions of pairs for Pioneer, right?
Yeah, you can't be right every time, David.
Right. So it was just my preference. I was going,
I am.
So it's just my preference that I'm listening to him going, okay, I'm not that impressed with them, but it doesn't really matter, because I think that even taught you something, because when you finally did go to ELAC, I heard about everyone freaking about these tiny little speakers that Andrew Jones had made. So I'd already made up my mind. I mean, I like you, and I know what you can do at like, $1 million, like the TADs. I think they were somewhere around 100 grand or so, a little better than 100 grand.
80,000.
Yeah. So 80 grand. I knew what you do for 80 grand. I mean, I was blown away, but it's like, how much can you really do with a couple $100 or 250? It's just so you can only do so much. I mean, my God, you can't even really build a decent box for that. However, you went to ELAC and built these tiny little speakers that I absolutely flipped over. I'm trying to remember the name of the first ones you came up with. They were the
debut.
Debut. Right. And I think I had listened to those, and as soon as I heard them, I'm going, I've got to show these speakers because I've always believed that high-end sound isn't necessarily reserved for only the richest people in the world. The better you are, if you're a really great engineer, you can actually take a design and make it sound good with what you're given, with the resources you're given, which still wasn't a whole lot. It was something like, I think, these guys. I think that was...
So the one on the left there, that's a picture of two different speakers there.
Yeah, right.
So the one on the left was the debut B5, so 5-inch woofer, 1-inch soft dome tweeter, and that's what we started ELAC with. When the idea of joining ELAC was, we'd had all this success at Pioneer, and with that low-cost speaker, it started life at $89 a pair, and quickly kind of moved up to 99, and then the Mark II version was at 129 a pair. And certainly when we were designing that, we'd been given a price point, or we'd worked out the price point with Best Buy as to what that should be. It was Best Buy that sort of instigated the project. And my colleague Chris worked with them on planning what speakers we should do. And of course, my job was to engineer a price point. And I'd kind of lost a bit of touch with the prices that we could buy components for. So my first thought was, let's just design what I wish I could do, and then see what it costs, and then see what I have to pull out to meet the price point. And I was shocked at how much we could incorporate at that price point and get a real speaker, real drivers, real crossover, not just a capacitor on the tweeter. And so it turned out to be hugely successful for us. So when we started with ELAC, we were given the opportunity to start a new division for ELAC. ELAC was nearly 90 years old at the time.
Right, yeah.
Headquartered in Germany. Were very well known throughout Europe and Asia for all their products, but they'd never really broken into the US market for speakers. They had in the 50s and 60s for turntables, the Benjamin Miracord turntables, very successful. ELAC was the inventor of the moving magnet cartridge, held patents, licensed to Shaw, and manufactured for Shaw in those days. They were the third largest turntable manufacturer in the world. All of that changed in the early 80s with the introduction of CD. So they switched to concentrate on speakers. But they never captured the American market in the way they had with turntables. So our role was to come in and say, well, we know the American market. I know how to design. I know how to design anything from flagship to very, very entry-level price points. What should we do? And we determined that because of the success we'd had with that Pioneer speaker, we sold over the lifetime, it's still being manufactured now,
right.
6 years after I left. But at that time, we'd sold, $40 million worth of those speakers. And so it was, well, people have been asking, well, I want to spend more money. What do you have as the next one up from that price point? So we said, it would make sense to start there with ELAC, because I could do another flagship, but that takes years to develop and longer to establish a market for it. That's not the way to try and relaunch ELAC in America. The way to do it is to design what people have been asking for, a slightly more expensive but still very affordable speaker. And that way we can reach more of the market, because what we realized is the need of people who don't have money to spend but still want to get started in hi-fi.
Right.
And speakers at that price point up to then, no one really cared what they sounded like. They had to have the right number of drive units and look nice.
That's exactly right.
All right. And the thing was, even if you went into Best Buy, they're all on a shelf. You can't really get a good idea. You're lucky if they're connected up in the first place. You're even more lucky if they're connected in phase. So what could we do if we could get it to sound right and get hi-fi people interested? We showed them first at a CES in the sound booth, on the Pioneer booth, on the main CES floor. And real reviewers came in and they were shocked by what it could do. So that started. So, okay, let's do the next price point upwards. What is that? Well, about $230 a pair. So that's what the debut, we call it debut because it's our debut with ELAC, and the B5 because it was a 5-inch unit. Set them up, and it was a Los Angeles hi-fi show that we launched it at, and it just knocked everyone's socks off, and that just boom. We were there, and we continued building on that.
Okay, so here's a story on that one, Andrew. It's like that's when I went to Andrew, because like I say, we're friends. We can actually talk. If there's something that I'm doing that Andrew thinks is not right, he can always come to me and go, man, that was really a stupid thing you guys did. Why did you do that? You should have done it this way. But we've got that kind of a relationship that I didn't mind telling Andrew I really didn't care for the Pioneers. But then I heard the ELACs, the small ELACs, they were so cheap. They were like $200-300 a pair or something like that, the debut.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And so I'm going, as soon as I heard this, I went straight to Andrew, and I think Chris was there as well. And I'm going, guys, I want to use this speaker the next show to do. And you guys were like, no problem. Go away, kid. You're bothering me. We'll just ask us and we'll get you. So you did. And I'm trying to remember. I think this was in San Francisco. I'm almost positive. But the first set that I used were these guys.
Yes.
Right. I had a little pair of Santa stands, and I think it was like a little 100-watt amplifier or something that I put on a Peachtree, and people were dropping their jaw. The question that I continued to get, the most popular question of the show is they were going, well, how much are these? And I think that I can't even remember. I think they were maybe $300 or $400 a pair, but whatever they were, everyone consistently said, well, that's each, right? And we're going, well, no, that's a pair. Now this, if you're dealing with an isolated system like this and you really don't have a reference that you can go, well, this sounds awfully good. I mean, the speakers completely disappeared. This sounds awfully good, but I wonder what it would sound like. I wonder what a better system would sound like. On the other side of the room, I had this system. I had a pair of the little Wilson Sashas. They had just first come out. So that may give you an idea. I think it's maybe around, I don't even remember, maybe 2015 or 2016, something like that.
2016.
At any rate, we would play this system, and then we would turn around and play this system. This has got to be somewhere around maybe a $23,000 system with the Wilsons, and it sounded fabulous. I mean, these things would just rock the room. But then as soon as we finished, we were going, well, look, a lot of people can't afford 20 grand for a system. What would you think about $1,000? And I think this system came in right at $1,200. And people just totally flipped out. We actually won best of show. It was a it was a budget. That was the budget category. We won best of show in the budget category. And that happened, I think, 3 shows in a row, because we just kept using, different little ELAC speakers, and they just sounded fantastic. To me, it was the total opposite experience than I had with the Pioneers, which were, I don't know, good with a qualifier, and the qualifier is, well, they're pretty good for $100. But when you had an extra 100 or 2 to deal with, all of a sudden, I mean, we're dealing with real speakers here with real high performance audio, which totally thrilled me, as it did most of the audience that listened to them. And I know that this was super successful for you guys, because we were talking about this yesterday. It's, unless you've got an extremely good reputation, very few companies can start at the bottom end and work their way up. Most of the time, to your point, you start with this flagship and then you kind of work your way down. But you had developed such a reputation for being able to do things very economically, let's say, that I think everyone just wanted them to be as good as the Pioneers. But when everyone found out, oh my God, they're so much better than the Pioneers, that's when I think that's when you guys took off. Is that correct?
It is interesting because you're saying when they got the chance to listen to that system, they were thrilled. Well, this applies to me as well. Everyone is thrilled when either you or I finally stop talking and stop playing the music.
True.
I've been told in many demos, could you stop talking and play something?
Oh my God, me too. But we have so much fun interacting with the people. That's the
it makes it more memorable. Yeah.
We don't have to fake it. I mean, it's like, God, can you believe they pay us to do this?
Yeah, and I think the pair that you had in that, then I think it was the UB5s. So the second, so we launched with
second.
We launched with the debut at $230 a pair, and then when it came to do the next speakers in the range, it's question, well, what should we do? And to some degree, you do a competitive analysis. I typically don't really listen much to other people's speakers because everyone has their idea of what sound they want. So it's not that I'm trying to target the sound someone else is doing. It's just I have in my head what I want to achieve. But you still want to know what value people are giving and what it looks like, those kind of things. So we looked at the survey and it seemed that stepping up from, let's say, $250 to $500 a pair, you still get typically a two-way compact box, but it'll be much better looking for that price point. It will be better quality drivers and better sound, but it's not at first sight, oh, it's a completely different thing at double the price. It's just a better version of the $250 one. So what we wanted to do is make something very different to that $500 price point. And since I've got such a long history of doing concentric drivers, at KEF and Pioneer and TAD, I wanted it to be a concentric driver based, but as a three-way, not a two-way, because there's always compromises when you try and do a two-way concentric driver. So I prefer to do three-way if I can, but it's very much more costly to do a three-way compared to a two-way. So that was the challenge that we set ourselves. Can we do $500 three-way concentric? And so it didn't really give room for much improvement in aesthetics. It was basically the same aesthetics as the debut, but it was a whole different sound, a step up in sound performance. And that's what you used. And again, it was very successful for us.
Yeah. I mean, we honestly, we were thrilled. We were surprised in the most wonderful way. And I think it was the next year, Marjorie from Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, they were trying to put, because I was telling her, I'm going, you can't just have $100,000 systems all over the place. It's just off-putting for like normal people. Why don't you start, some inexpensive rooms? So she did something really cool, and she started a $500, $1,000, and a $1,500 room. And we were a part of that. And she said, well, what speakers do you want to use? And I'm going, well, the ELACs. We got to use and let's just use the little ones because they just blow. So we had a whole system. I believe it was with a turntable, the U-turn, I think it was, one of the Peachtree amps, and then the little ELAC speakers, and it came in somewhere around $1,400 or whatever, and a huge hit at the show. So I mean, it was just, I love when a designer can do something that even real audiophiles can appreciate, and you have just been masterful at that. And then I think you started stepping it up a little bit with, you started stepping up a little bit with these guys, right?
Not immediately. That was a sort of
but it eventually came.
Yeah, but the idea was ultimately with that debut, and it will happen with Unify as well, what is the best you can do within the format of what that speaker system was? And so debut reference was the idea. Well, first of all, we did debut Mark II, which whenever you're designing something, like I was saying finishing something. Engineers are never finished. They always know what they're going to be doing next. And so even once you've got into production, you've already started thinking, well, what would I do next time? So Debut Mark II was the answer to that. What have I learned? What's the reaction been to the original version? What could I improve? So we made changes to have Debut Mark II. But it was still all the engineering going into the sound rather than the visual appeal. And so Debut Reference was to say, okay, now let's add even better componentry inside there, cast chassis, better box construction, better crossover, these kind of things, but also add much more visual appeal, painted front baffles, nice bright turning on the chassis for the cast chassis. So
I love the grill too. The grills are beautiful.
And the grill and magnetic grill and front slot port, all those kind of things. So visually much more appealing, but also once again a step up in sound quality. That's the most difficult part in designing. That if you've got a really successful product, what constitutes a better version of that? Was it popular because of its flaws? Because every speaker is flawed. There is not a perfect speaker. The art of the science of design is looking at those imperfections, choosing which ones you want to minimize and which ones you have to live with because you can't minimize them all. Or you do a bit to everything, so it's flawed over a wide range instead of in just some particular areas. Those are the kind of things you have to take care of. And so what constitutes better? Is it what constitutes better to me, or what I think people are looking for? And that's a very difficult balance.
So which one? What did you go with?
Basically, it's all about me, David. It always is.
I would hope so. I mean, it's like, you're the surgeon. It should be your decision. That's just my opinion, but
no, I obviously I listen to what people are saying about products.
Sure.
You have to.
Oh yeah.
But you can chase your tail because let's just take overall frequency balance. Is it a bright sounding speaker? Is it a dim sounding speaker? Or is it just about right? And it doesn't matter whose product it is or what the balance is. Some people will say sounds one way to them, others will say sounds the other way. And so which one do you pick if you're based on reviews of it? I don't mean professional reviews. I'm talking about just customer reviews.
Sure.
Do you add them all up and see, were there more people saying it's too bright, say, or too dim? But then how did you know you polled everyone properly? So you can get lost in that second guessing. And so I have to just go with my gut feeling, my preferences. That's what I've done pretty much my whole life with the speaker.
I think I'm honestly, in my opinion, that's why they pay you. I mean, everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody's got an opinion.
I have,
but it's just like a recording engineer. You and I both know Bill Schnee fairly well.
Yeah.
And it's like when it comes down to that in mastering, I don't care what anybody says. At the end of the day, I want it to sound as good as Bill can make that recording sound. It's the same way with you. It's like at the end of the day, I trust your ears. I trust what you've done in the past. So my preference would be going, I appreciate what the feedback, and I'm sure you take it, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to make the decision and pull the trigger. And I'm always hoping that's your trigger.
Yes, it is. Nobody tells me what it should sound like. It's my sole decision. It always has been.
You've done a great job.
Yeah, and I think
companies. So
it's what you have to do is, I guess, you look at the success you're having, and clearly, if my choice of what I wanted to hear doesn't gel with anybody, you're not going to have a successful career.
Right.
You've got two choices. Either try and give them what they want or give up. The other way is, fortunately, people have liked my choice. So it's given me a career, and I can then just have to second guess myself. You know, that's where I start to always feel insecure, that I'm going to change something that everybody likes. And first of all, I've got to be able to improve it, prove to myself that it is improved and that I like it. And if it's noticeably different, which it would have to be from the original, will everyone accept my new choice of what that should be? And, you know, it's always a risk. But,
yeah, I think it's a calculated risk, though.
Yeah.
I know in my own career, I've had to voice, several speakers, but I am like super OCD and super picky. So the way I looked at it is like, if I can please myself, which is next to impossible to do, everybody's gonna love this. And that's, in my career, that's the way it's worked. And I gotta believe on a lot of levels, that's the way it's worked with you as well.
You brought a strange image up in my mind when you talked about pleasing yourself, but we'll let that go.
I've got to get off on these speakers. If I don't get off on them, then I just won't put them out. We built some speakers with Michael Kelly several years ago, and just the whole crossover process. I'm a tinkerer. I'm not a scientist, but in tinkering and with assistance from Michael Kelly, who owns Aerial Acoustics, we ended up with a really nice crossover, one that I was really proud of. And if it weren't for that, though, if it would have come down to this thing just sounds horrible and I would never have this in my house, we just wouldn't have come out with them. So I got to tell you, I really appreciate what you bring to the table in that sense, because for me, I trust your judgment. I trust your ears. And until you prove me wrong, I'm just going to keep trusting your ears. I think.
Well, apparently I did at least once in my career.
You've certainly impressed me most of your career. The only time it wasn't impressive was a $100 speaker. I mean, but I'm going, who can make $100 speaker? Nobody. So at least ELAC realize that this, you can do really amazing things. So let's just give the guy what he needs to build the first decent speaker. And that's what I heard. So yeah, I've used and recommended the small ELACs for people that didn't have a large budget. It's 99 times out of 100. That's my recommendation for people. And now you guys are building powered speakers and all kinds of stuff. And another thing that you're building, before we go into that, though, I do want to just mention once again that we're going to be giving away these beautiful ELAC speakers. The question that you'll need to answer is, give me a couple of advantages of concentric drivers. So if you look at this thing, it's a true three-way speaker. There's a tweeter in the middle of the small driver on top and the mid-range combined, along with the bottom end, along with the bass woofer, and just an absolute beautiful design. And right in between those speakers is another thing that you guys, and I got to tell you, I am super excited about this. This is the Discovery from ELAC. And Andrew, can you just tell us a little bit about the Discovery?
Yeah, this was the first electronic product that we actually released, and as part of ELAC. And it's a music server, but embedded architecture for running Roon. So we were the first to bring out a kind of hi-fi product, running Roon, that was not using your laptop. And it took a lot of work. All credit to the people who designed this. It wasn't me, put it that way. I know some electronics, but I could never do something of this magnitude. To me, it's a remarkable device. I'm totally sold on Rune and its usability and its architecture and how you can learn music or learn about music. And this is why we call it discovery, because you get lost down the rabbit hole. This idea of,
oh my God, yes.
I know what music I like. I don't know what music I would like if I could only get exposed to it. Even I remember back in the days of Kef, I liked jazz. I didn't know what jazz I liked.
Right.
One of my friends was a jazz enthusiast. So I said to him, hey, Rob, any chance you could loan me about a dozen CDs of a variety of different styles of jazz? I can listen to them and say, yeah, it's that kind of what those I like, these I don't. And then you can put me more in touch with more of what I like and just go down there.
That's the way it was back in those days. I mean,
yes. And he actually threw in something that wasn't jazz. It was Astor Piazzolla. And he said, this isn't jazz, but you need to listen to it. Right. And I was just floored by that, and then became a huge fan of Astor Piazzolla. So discovery, Rune, offering that ability to look at the artists and then interrogate your record collection or Tidal or Qobuz of where else do those artists appear, either on their own albums or as guests on other albums, and then just pull it up and listen to it. And you just go whoosh and
I can't. Here's what I tell people about Rune and Qobuz. If you can go to bed before 3 o'clock in the morning, if you've got those two components, if you've got those two tools, then you're just doing it wrong. I've gone down so many rabbit holes, and it's like it's like it'll be like 11 or so in the evening. You're going, well, I'll just listen to this one more thing, but that one more thing leads to literally hundreds or thousands or millions of things. If you had that much time, I mean, nobody's got that much time. Here's the cool thing about the Discovery to me that has the Rune base is that it's easy to manage 1,000 albums.
Yeah,
it's something totally different managing 1 million or 2 million or 5 million. You just can't do it. You don't have enough time. There's not enough capacity in our brains. To me, that's the cool thing about Rune is it helps me not only manage my 1,000 albums, it gives me millions and millions more it suggests and it offers and it plays radio and it does all of these really cool things. And even on just the radio, you're going, oh my God, who is that player? I've never heard them, but Rune just kind of knows what you like. So I love the combination, and not only the combination of Rune and the Discovery, but you guys were so smart. And I can't believe I didn't put a picture of these things up here, but you guys have got powered speakers now that you can literally take a Discovery and a pair of the powered ELAC speakers and you're done. That's literally all you need for millions and millions of songs. Plus it plays full 24/192.
Yes.
And so really you have got a high-end system with, say, a pair of powered speakers and this little guy.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the way we built that Discovery is it's a self-contained unit. You just use your iPad to control it. Hook up your Ethernet connection, and you're done. It's like a hi-fi piece of hi-fi that you put in your rack, and self-contained. You're not fighting a computer. Updates are transparent to you mostly, and it's computer sound for people who can't deal with computers, and it's so versatile. You can have multiple users building their own, accessing their own music lists in there. And like I say, plug it into a pair of active speakers, and that's all you need. So I just love that device, and I use it all the time.
I'm really looking for. I'm getting one soon, but I'm really looking forward to playing around with it because I'm a huge Rune fan. I mean, it's like
the Rune license fee is built in because it's running Rune Essentials.
So now that is
you don't have to pay for Rune.
Right. Okay. So if you don't know this, if you were to pay for Rune, I think the subscription is $10 a month,
I think
or
it's more.
it's like, or if you do lifetime, I did a lifetime. I think lifetime now is up to like $700 or $800.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
something
Yeah.
like that. So this is all built right into the Discovery, and I think the whole Discovery is $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a question there. It's a Rune core. It is the music server. It is Rune. You don't need anything else, just the hard drive or access to your network. And it's all
This
built.
is something very unique with ELAC, because I don't know of another company that's throwing out something like this that you get
Right.
Rune forever, right? So
No,
yeah, if you here's the thing, if you're a total music lover, Rune to me is not for everybody. My wife, it's just too much for her. She just doesn't care enough. She just wants to hit a button and go. Um, but it is for a lot of people. If you are a true music lover, if you love discovering music, I can't, there's never been anything like it. I mean, there's never been anything like it. There is no GUI, there's no graphic user interface on any server anywhere that even scratches the surface of Rune. I mean,
Yeah.
you can pick out your favorite artist or your favorite song or whatnot, but it's just, they're just not very intuitive. I find totally the opposite with Rune. But like I say, the only problem is know your weaknesses, because if your weaknesses are my weaknesses, you're going to be up till 2 or 3 o'clock every morning, just hoping you can go to bed after the next cut. So I think that was a brilliant move that you guys made with this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So then in that picture of the Unifies that are the giveaway, in between there it's not the Discovery, that is our amplifier. And so
oh yeah, I didn't
right?
notice that. I just
So that's a Rune endpoint, Spotify Connect, Bluetooth, AirPlay, 80 watts per channel, Room EQ built in, auto matching of subwoofer to main speakers, Dolby Digital decoding for 2.1 system, dedicated subwoofer out. It's a lot packaged into that small little device. And
how much is this piece, Andrew? I'm sorry.
I wish I could remember. Probably $700, $800. It's on the website.
That's still Rune Red. It's got Rune built in. You don't have to.
Rune
So that's what makes this thing such a great. That's what makes this thing such a great deal. Because, like I say, if you were just to buy Rune, period, you're already at like $800. So this has got it built in. The Discovery's got it built in.
No, this hasn't got Rune built in. This is a Rune.
This has got the endpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like like any of the other servers that can be used as Rune endpoints. So yeah, that sounds like an awesome product. I'm really liking that a lot. So yeah, remember, you can win these speakers. These are they're $600 UB52s, brand new, and hope you guys. I can't wait to see who wins these things. Remember the question: what are a couple of advantages of concentric drivers? Andrew, we have been going. I cannot believe that we've been going an hour and a half, because it feels like if it were just you and I, we would just continue to go. But I wanted to thank you for being on the show. But more importantly, what have we left out anything that we should be? Oh yeah, we have left out something super, super important. Until the end of February, if you end up buying any ELAC product, and if you know Cobuzz, we just don't do this, which makes the ELAC even a better deal. But if you buy any ELAC product between now and the end of February, you get 90 days, or no, I'm sorry, 6 months free 90 days free Cobuzz. Sorry. With the speakers that we're giving away today, we're going to give the winner a 6 month subscription of Cobuzz, and then we're just going to go ahead and give away 2 more 6-month subscriptions, and these will all be based on the question: what are a couple of advantages of concentric drivers. We didn't talk about it a lot, but we did that on purpose. I wanted you to have to look it up and study a little bit about concentric drivers because they're absolutely fascinating when you put that tweeter in the middle and you actually know what you're doing, as Andrew does because he's been doing it for like a couple of days now. The sound is just unbelievable, and it totally these boxes, even the very smallest ELACs. We started talking about boxes earlier. They don't sound like boxes. They sound like music. The boxes disappear. If you happen to own ELAC speakers and the boxes are not disappearing, it's just a bit of a setup issue. Play around with them a little bit. Look up on YouTube setups, and I'm quite sure you'll find some good advice there. So tell me, Andrew, we really have kind of gone over a lot today. What if we left out that you would like everyone to know?
I think it's more about the direction we're going. The Discovery was an unusual device, solving a need that we had but wasn't being met. Speakers are sort of doing that, solving a price-performance ratio that wasn't adequately or sufficiently being met by enough people. So giving folks the chance of building a better sound system for the money than they might have been able to before. The amplifier, we were looking at how people using stereo amplifiers and how they could integrate a subwoofer, and what do you do about room EQ? You've got all these features available in receivers which are not available in stereo amplifiers, and adding in the Roon endpoint capability, all those. Solving a customer need that wasn't being met. It's not just about, does this particular amplifier sound better than amplifier B, but does it offer facilities that solve issues that you have in operating the system?
I think the simple way to say that is, does it work like I live my life? That's
a good way of saying it. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, how do I live my life? Do I want to be able to, pick this thing up and punch the button and this happen or that happen? And I think you guys have hit on all the cylinders.
Yeah, same with the powered speaker. We were looking at, if we're going to do a powered speaker, do we do it just the standard old way or the new way where everything is built in and it is the system?
Are you talking about the difference between active and powered?
Not simply active and powered. They're two sides of the same coin, but it's how much you build into the speaker. You can do an old style active speaker or powered speaker, which is just an analog in.
Right.
And it's a fully analog system. Or you can go the whole hog and put everything in, all the DSP, the DACs, the streaming capabilities.
Right.
And it sort of becomes a modern equivalent of the old radiogram. It is everything, but by virtue of it being everything, it's never upgradable. If you want to replace anything, you're replacing everything in one go. But it's solving a real need for listeners who have come from a computer speaker environment, want to do better, don't want to mess around with the typical hi-fi world of lots of boxes and cables and what not only do I have to decide on what speakers I need, what do I decide for the amplifier, the preamp, everything like that. So it splits into two camps. And what we wanted to do with the active speaker is say, it doesn't have to be two camps. We can solve both needs by making it a fundamentally analog active speaker, which in itself for a price point can do better than a passive speaker and a single amplifier. So it meets the audiophile need other than removing their choice of power amplifier, but you've got free choice of everything else. But then also building in wireless capability for the new listener, which then with the little transmitter device we've got, turns it into a Roon endpoint system and streaming and Spotify and all of these things. So you've got a duality nature to it. You can treat it as a new style audio device, but simultaneously it can be an old style high-end audio.
Yeah, the cool thing about that is it's such a more simple process because unlike a lot of people think, this doesn't have to be hugely complicated. You should be able to plug your stuff up the way the manual says, open your app, and it be this process that you just fill out the information, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're hooked up. Now you got millions and millions of songs on Spotify, as you say, or Cobuzz, as I say. Whatever service that you're dealing with, it's not a hard process.
But this is the thing about appealing to people. I get immensely frustrated with modern devices, anything. My new fridge has got an app to go with it. And it took me, you could say this is more about me than the device. It took me nearly 2 hours until I could finally get my phone hooked up to my fridge. And all it does is tell me what the temperature is, which I can see on the display, and tells me if I've left the door open. That's all it does for 2 hours. And so this idea of...
And not only that, now it's using up IP space, and you're going, I really don't need that. Yeah.
But this idea of understanding the customer, as an engineer, you never want me to be, well, you don't want engineers writing manuals, because engineers are too close to the subject, and they'll just gloss over all these things that seem self-evident.
Right, you should know this.
Imagine, back at university, my best friend from school went with me to study physics. And he gave up after a term, 10 weeks, couldn't hack physics at university level. So he changed to doing social studies, psychology, sociology, and philosophy. Whoa, was that different than studying physics? We got into a conversation one evening, and we're arguing, discussing some concept. And he said, you can't argue against that. That's a self-evident axiom. And I go, what on earth does that? What is a self-evident axiom? Well, it's an axiom. It's self-evident. And it kind of, okay, you can't argue against that. I guess. I like some of the foundations of mathematics rely on saying this is what it is, and we'll build mathematics for that. Euclidean geometry or whatever. You can't go before that. Like the Big Bang, you can't go before the Big Bang kind of idea. You just accept there was a Big Bang, and then what were the repercussions of the Big Bang? And so you need to be in the space and understanding, what do people like? What can they handle? How can they make it work? And then meet their needs. Raymond Cook, who founded KEF, he used to come down to the engineering and say, the problem with you guys is you come up with engineering solutions to problems that nobody knew existed or cared about, which was pretty true. What you want to come up with is engineering solutions to problems that people do care about and know about, not that only matter to engineers. And that's kind of the driving philosophy of new devices that we might be doing at ELAC. Let's try and take care of that and get it right. And it's a complex subject, especially with streaming services and all these new things you can do. You can go horribly wrong, or you can get it right, spend the time to get it right. And you don't always get it right first time, but you need to keep at it to make sure it becomes transparent to the user.
Well, for our listeners now, we had mentioned this early on, but Andrew has got a playlist on Cobuzz. Right now, it's just called Andrew Jones Demos. You would be wise to go to that, because Andrew, I think in this respect, we're somewhat the same. Not to put me in the same category that you're in, but when I build a playlist, every song is there for, when I'm doing it for audio, every song is there for a reason, whether it be bass definition or mid-range purity, high-end extension, sound staging. In my experience, your playlists always, like I say, I haven't listened to it. I can't wait to hear it. I just found out about it today. But in my experience, that's the way you build a playlist as well. You'll play a tune, or you'll let the audience know what they're supposed to hear, and then you will let them hear that, which is really highly educational. So if you've never been to an Andrew Jones audio demo, I think this will be about as close as you'll be able to get to it, but it's really cool. So when you go to Cobuzz, look up Andrew Jones demo, and we'll try it. I'm gonna actually have this on Streaming Music Matters. If you're a music fan and you haven't started joining us on Streaming Music Matters, please do. It's all about music. The crowd there, they suggest great music. It's always talking about music, something to do with music or gear, but it's always up there, and we would love to have you. It'll be there. It'll be on Cobuzz social. So we'll put this playlist out in as much as we can. But if you're interested now, look at Andrew Jones demos on Cobuzz, and you'll find it. And with that, like I said, I cannot believe I actually been going about an hour and 40 minutes, and these are supposed to usually be like an hour, but they never are. They're always over. But Andrew, my friend, it's so good seeing your face. It's so good talking to you. It's so good hearing your English dialect. I love it. I'm horrible at it. I did that for somebody once, and they went, Dick Van Dyke.
Oh yeah, good grief.
So at any rate, listen, man, thank you so much for joining us, and wishing you the very best through the rest of the pandemic, and hope to see you sometime later this year at a show.
Yeah, hope to get traveling again. I miss my travel.
Me too, brother. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much. This will conclude our time with Andrew Jones. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday, like we say, with a really special show. So please join us there. And until then, we will bid you an adieu. I think, Neetha, if you're still here, I think you end us out. If not, I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast now. Thanks a lot for joining us, everyone.